In 1961, Carl Jung sat across from a patient who appeared, by all external measures, entirely normal. Successful career, stable relationships, no obvious trauma. Yet this man was, in his own words, losing his mind. He couldn't sleep. His thoughts raced endlessly. He felt disconnected from himself, as if watching his own life from outside his body. Traditional diagnoses found nothing. Medical tests revealed no abnormalities. But Jung saw something others had missed. Through months of careful analysis, Jung traced the problem not to chemical imbalance or repressed memories, but to 7 specific psychological spaces this man inhabited every single day. These weren't physical locations, they were mental environments, invisible traps that systematically rewired his patient's consciousness, draining his vitality, fragmenting his identity, and eroding his capacity for authentic thought. Jung realized that the patient wasn't mentally ill. He was psychologically contaminated by environments that most people enter daily without recognizing the damage. Once Jung helped him identify and escape these 7 spaces, the transformation was immediate and lasting. The patient didn't just recover, he awakened to a reality most people never perceive. Jung would later write, "Neurosis is not just about what happens inside the individual, it's about where the individual places their consciousness." He understood something revolutionary, that certain psychological environments function like toxins, slowly poisoning your mind while offering the illusion of safety, productivity, or connection. You enter these spaces thinking they're necessary, normal, even beneficial, but they're systematically destroying your capacity for clear thought, authentic emotion, and sovereign selfhood. And here's what makes Jung's discovery both liberating and terrifying. Most people spend the majority of their lives trapped in these places, never realizing that their anxiety, depression, and existential emptiness aren't personal failings, they're symptoms of environmental poisoning. The spaces you inhabit mentally are as crucial to your psychological health as the air you breathe is to your physical body. And just as toxic air silently destroys your lungs, toxic psychological places silently destroy your mind. If you've ever felt drained by relationships that seemed fine on the surface, if you've noticed yourself becoming someone you don't recognize in certain environments, if you experience anxiety that has no clear cause but intensifies in specific situations, you're experiencing what Jung called psychic contamination. This isn't about dramatic trauma or obvious abuse. It's about the subtle, daily poisoning that occurs when you place your consciousness in environments designed to fragment, control, or diminish you. Jung discovered that the mind isn't separate from its environment. It's shaped by it, sometimes irreversibly. Modern neuroscience confirms Jung's intuition. Dr. Bruce McEwen's research on allostatic load demonstrates that chronic environmental stress physically reshapes brain structures, particularly the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. You're not imagining that certain spaces make you different. They literally change your neural architecture. And while most people focus on external environments, toxic workplaces, dysfunctional families, Jung understood that the most dangerous places are psychological, mental spaces you enter through habit, unconscious pattern, or social conditioning. These 7 places Jung identified aren't metaphors. They're real psychological territories with measurable impacts on your cognition, emotion, and selfhood. And recognizing them isn't just about mental health, it's about survival. Because what you're about to learn is hidden knowledge, the 7 places that destroy your mind, how to recognize when you're trapped in them, and Jung's escape protocol that can save not just your sanity, but your soul. Place 1. The echo chamber, where your thoughts become your prison. The first place Jung identified is the most insidious because it disguises itself as safety. The echo chamber is any environment, internal or external, where your existing beliefs are constantly reinforced and never challenged. Jung's 1961 patient lived here, surrounded by people who thought like him, read the same materials, confirmed his worldview. It felt comfortable, even validating. But Jung recognized a pattern. The patient's thinking had become rigid, his emotional range narrow, his capacity for empathy diminished. He wasn't growing, he was calcifying. Jung understood that the human psyche requires opposition, friction, and challenge to remain healthy. Dr. Jonathan Haidt's research on intellectual diversity demonstrates that exposure to opposing viewpoints literally expands neural networks involved in critical thinking and emotional regulation. The echo chamber does the opposite. It creates what Jung called psychic stagnation, where your consciousness stops evolving and begins collapsing inward. You mistake repetition for truth, familiarity for wisdom. Your thoughts become an endless loop, and that loop becomes your identity. Consider Marcus, a political activist who surrounded himself exclusively with people who shared his ideology. For years, he felt righteous, certain, empowered. But Jung would have recognized the signs Marcus missed: increasing anxiety, inability to tolerate disagreement, compulsive need to convert others. Marcus wasn't strengthening his convictions. He was trapped in an echo chamber where his thoughts bounced back at him endlessly, becoming more extreme with each repetition. When his brother challenged him during a family dinner, Marcus experienced not just disagreement, but existential threat. He couldn't debate, he could only defend, because his entire sense of self had become fused with the echo chamber's walls. Your escape begins with what Jung called enantiodromia, the principle that everything eventually becomes its opposite. Deliberately expose yourself to perspectives that challenge your certainties, not to abandon your values, but to test them. Read authors you disagree with. Engage with people whose worldview differs from yours. Notice when your mind reflexively rejects ideas before examining them. That reflex is the echo chamber protecting itself. The goal isn't to change your mind about everything. It's to maintain mental flexibility, the capacity to think rather than merely repeat. But the echo chamber is just the first trap. The second place is even more culturally.
Place 2. The comparison arena, where your worth dies daily. Jung observed that his patient constantly measured himself against others, their success, possessions, status, relationships. This comparison wasn't occasional or casual. It was compulsive, automatic, the lens through which he processed all experience. Jung identified this as the comparison arena, a psychological space where your sense of self is perpetually determined by external metrics, where achievement becomes meaningless because someone always has more, and where your intrinsic worth evaporates in the scorching light of comparison. Modern research on social comparison theory, pioneered by Leon Festinger, shows that upward comparison, measuring yourself against those doing better, triggers cortisol release, activates threat response systems, and suppresses dopamine pathways associated with contentment. The comparison arena isn't just unpleasant, it's neurologically toxic. Dr. Jan Crusius's studies demonstrate that chronic comparison correlates with depression, anxiety, and what Jung called ego fragmentation, the splintering of coherent self-concept into a collection of inadequacies. Sarah, a graphic designer, lived in this space completely. Every project she completed felt hollow because someone's work was always more innovative, more recognized, more lucrative. She couldn't celebrate her own achievements. They dissolved instantly in comparison to others. Jung would recognize this as more than insecurity. It's psychological annihilation, the systematic destruction of your capacity to experience your own life as meaningful. Sarah wasn't ambitious. She was trapped in an arena where the game was rigged, where winning was impossible because the goalposts constantly receded based on others' positions. The escape protocol Jung developed, the intrinsic value audit. For 30 days, whenever you notice comparison arising, pause and ask, if this person didn't exist, would my achievement situation still have value to me? This question reveals whether you're living your own life or performing for an imaginary audience. Then practice what Jung called individuation in isolation. Deliberately pursuing goals, interests, or activities with zero external validation potential. The point isn't to stop caring about others' opinions, it's to re-establish an internal locus of worth that precedes comparison.
Yet, even escaping the comparison arena leaves you vulnerable to the third place, perhaps the most culturally mandated trap. Place 3, the performance theater, where your authentic self suffocates. Jung's patient described feeling like he was always on stage, performing a version of himself for different audiences, professional at work, familial at home, social with friends. None of these performances felt like lies exactly, but neither did any feel true. Jung identified the performance theater, environments where authenticity is punished and persona maintenance becomes your full-time occupation. This wasn't mere social courtesy, it was existential erasure. Jung wrote extensively about the persona, the social mask we all wear. But he distinguished healthy persona, flexible, contextual, from toxic persona, rigid, totalizing. The performance theater demands toxic persona. You must never break character, never reveal vulnerability, never behave in ways that contradict your assigned role. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability shows that chronic performance creates what she calls shame resilience deficit. You become unable to be seen authentically because your entire sense of safety depends on maintaining the performance. David worked in corporate consulting, where polish, confidence, and unflappable composure were mandatory. For a decade, he performed flawlessly. Colleagues praised his professionalism. Clients trusted his expertise. But Jung would have seen the cost. David had no idea who he was beneath the performance. When he tried to relax with friends, the performance didn't stop. It just shifted to a different script. He'd lost access to spontaneity, genuine emotion, unguarded thought. He wasn't living, he was performing existence, and the theater was slowly suffocating him. Jung's protocol, the unmasking practice. Identify one relationship, ideally with someone you trust, where you commit to zero performance for 30 days. Not radical, honesty, but authentic presence. If you're tired, you don't perform energy. If you're uncertain, you don't perform confidence. If you're sad, you don't perform cheerfulness. This terrifies people because we've equated performance with survival. But Jung knew you can't individuate while performing because individuation requires knowing who you actually are beneath all the scripts. Start small. The goal isn't to abandon all social skill. It's to reclaim access to your authentic self. But even authentic self-expression won't save you if you're trapped in the fourth place. Place 4, the silent suffering space, where needs die unspoken. Jung encountered this in his patient's family system, an environment where conflict was avoided at all costs, where emotional needs went unacknowledged, where keeping the peace meant systematically silencing authentic communication. This is the silent suffering space. Any environment where harmony is prioritized over honesty, where your role is to absorb dysfunction quietly, where speaking truth is framed as causing problems. Jung understood this wasn't peace. It was psychological violence disguised as civility. Dr. Murray Bowen's family systems theory describes this as emotional cutoff and triangulation, patterns where genuine communication is replaced with silence, gossip, and unspoken rules. Research shows that chronic emotional suppression correlates with autoimmune disorders, cardiovascular disease, and severe depression. The silent suffering space isn't just emotionally toxic, it's physiologically lethal. Your body keeps the score of every need you swallow, every truth you silence. Elena grew up in a family where her mother's fragility was sacred. No one could express anger, frustration, or disappointment because it might upset mom. Elena learned to bury every negative emotion, to smile through pain, to prioritize others' comfort over her own truth. By 35, she had chronic migraines, digestive issues, and profound depression. Jung would recognize this instantly. Elena's body was screaming what her voice was forbidden to say. She wasn't suffering from medical problems. She was suffering from decades in a space where her needs didn't matter, and silence was the price of belonging. Jung's exit strategy, the truth utterance method. Start with written truth. Journal every suppressed need, unspoken resentment, silenced boundary. Don't censor. Then practice micro-truths, small, low-stakes, authentic communications. Actually, I don't want to attend that event. I need alone time tonight. That comment hurt me. Not aggressive, but honest. Most people discover the catastrophe they feared doesn't materialize. Boundaries don't destroy relationships. They make them real. But if speaking your truth does end a relationship, Jung would say you've discovered it was built on your silence, not your presence. Yet even truth-telling fails if you're drowning in the fifth place. Place 5, the chaos storm, where constant stimulation drowns your inner voice. Jung's patient lived in perpetual motion. Work demands, social obligations, news consumption, endless mental activity. He filled every quiet moment because silence felt unbearable. But Jung saw this wasn't preference, it was avoidance. The chaos storm is any environment, internal or external, where constant stimulation drowns out your capacity for reflection, where you stay so busy processing external input that you never encounter your own psyche. Modern culture has normalized this space, even celebrated it as productivity. Jung knew it was madness. Dr. Adam Ghazali's neuroscience research at UCSF demonstrates that chronic multitasking and constant stimulation impair prefrontal cortex function, reducing your capacity for coherent thought, emotional regulation, and strategic planning. The chaos storm doesn't just exhaust you, it fragments you. Jung called this psychic dissociation, where your consciousness splits into reactive fragments, unable to cohere into a unified self. You're not living your life, you're being lived by external stimuli. Michael, a tech entrepreneur, embodied this perfectly. Phone notifications, meetings, podcasts, news feeds, constant messages. He called it staying informed and connected. Jung would call it fleeing from himself. When Michael contracted COVID and was forced into quarantine with no work, something in the silence, he encountered profound emptiness, unresolved grief, existential questions he'd been avoiding for years. The chaos storm had protected him from his own depths and nearly prevented him from ever encountering his actual self. Jung's intervention, the sacred stillness practice. Start with 10 minutes daily of zero input, no phone, no reading, no music, no conversation, just sitting with your own consciousness. This will feel unbearable at first. That discomfort is data. It reveals what you've been fleeing. Gradually extend to 30 minutes. In this space, Jung believed, the unconscious can finally communicate. Dreams become vivid, intuitions emerge. You remember who you are beneath all the noise. The storm will protest loudly, urgent tasks, important notifications, but Jung knew, until you can tolerate your own company in silence, you'll never be free. The sixth place reveals why so few people ever complete this work. Place 6, the self-abandonment chamber, where you betray yourself daily. This was, Jung observed, the most painful place his patient inhabited. Environments where maintaining relationships, status, or security required systematic betrayal of his own values, intuitions, and boundaries. The self-abandonment chamber isn't about single betrayals. It's about the daily, incremental surrender of selfhood in exchange for approval, belonging, or survival. Jung understood this as spiritual death. You keep breathing, but the self that makes life meaningful slowly expires. Research on cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger, and moral injury, Jonathan Shea, shows that acting against your core values creates profound psychological damage, more severe than external trauma. Your psyche literally cannot integrate actions that violate your essential nature. The result is what Jung called soul loss. You're physically present, but psychologically absent, ghosting through a life that requires the death of who you truly are. James worked for a company whose practices he found unethical. For years, he rationalized. Everyone compromises. He needed the income. He was making a difference in small ways. But Jung would have recognized the signs. James ignored cynicism, emotional numbing, compulsive distraction, disconnection from previously meaningful activities. James wasn't depressed. He was abandoning himself daily, and his psyche was dying from the betrayal. The chamber's cruelty is that you become complicit in your own destruction, telling yourself there's no choice while making the choice to stay every single day. Jung's escape demands the integrity inventory. List every situation where you regularly betray your values, override your intuition, or violate your boundaries. Then ask the terrifying question, what would it cost me to stop betraying myself here? The answer reveals your price, what you're willing to sacrifice, selfhood, to maintain security, approval, comfort. Jung was ruthless. If the cost of staying is your soul, leaving isn't optional. Find a way out. It won't be easy, but staying in the chamber isn't neutrality. It's choosing daily death over difficult transformation. The final place is where all the others converge. Place 7, the shadow basement, where rejected parts of yourself control your life. Jung saved this for last because it's the most fundamental. The shadow basement is the internal space where every quality you've rejected, denied, or disowned about yourself accumulates and begins operating autonomously. Your repressed anger, hidden weakness, forbidden desires, unacknowledged fear, these don't disappear when you reject them. They descend into the basement and start controlling your life from the darkness. This was Jung's revolutionary insight. What you refuse to integrate doesn't stop existing. It starts existing outside your conscious control. Neuroscience confirms this through implicit bias research and unconscious processing studies. Dr. John Bargh's work demonstrates that unconscious motivations, often based on repressed qualities, drive up to 95% of behavior. The shadow basement operates you. You think you're making conscious choices, but rejected parts of yourself are pulling the strings. Jung observed that his patient's rage at others' laziness masked his own repressed need for rest. His contempt for others' weakness concealed his terror of his own vulnerability.
Every intense judgment he made was a shadow projection, disowned parts of himself, externalized and condemned. The escape requires what Jung called shadow integration, the most difficult psychological work possible. You must identify what you most despise in others, then recognize those qualities in yourself. Not to become them, but to acknowledge their existence. This is agonizing because we've built our identities on not being those things. But Jung was clear. Only integrated darkness becomes light. Repressed darkness becomes demonic. The practice: when you feel intense negative emotion towards someone, ask, "How am I this?" Your mind will resist violently. Good. That resistance is the shadow defending its basement. Push through. If you judge someone's selfishness, find your selfishness. If you despise someone's weakness, locate your weakness. The point isn't self-flagellation. It's reclaiming disowned energy. Jung believed every shadow element contains power you need for wholeness. Integration, the psychological sovereignty protocol. You now understand the 7 places. But knowledge without practice changes nothing. Jung developed what I call the psychological sovereignty protocol, a systematic method for escaping these spaces and reclaiming your mind. Weeks 1 to 2, spatial awareness. 3 times daily, pause and ask, which psychological place am I in right now? Just notice, no judgment. You're building awareness of where your consciousness habitually goes. Keep a journal. Patterns will emerge. You enter the comparison arena in certain relationships, the performance theater at work, the silent suffering space with family. Weeks 3 to 4, exit mapping. For each place you frequent, identify your specific exit protocol from the 7 provided. Echo chamber, seek opposing views. Comparison arena, practice intrinsic value audit. Performance theater, unmask with one trusted person. Silent suffering, speak one micro-truth daily. Chaos storm, 10 minutes daily stillness. Self-abandonment, integrity inventory. Shadow basement, identify one projection weekly. Weeks 5 to 8, systematic implementation. Begin practicing one exit strategy, just one.
master it before adding another. Most people fail because they try everything simultaneously. Jung knew transformation is sequential, not simultaneous. If you're in 5 places, exit 1 per month. Slow isn't failing, it's sustainable. Weeks 9-12. Environmental redesign. Once you've developed awareness and practiced exits, redesign your life to minimize exposure to toxic spaces. This might mean changing jobs, relationships, or habits. It will be difficult. But Jung was clear. You can't maintain sovereignty while voluntarily inhabiting spaces designed to fragment you. Sometimes, freedom requires leaving. The promise. People who complete this protocol don't just feel better, they become fundamentally different. They think clearly in environments that confuse others. They maintain authenticity in spaces that demand performance. They recognize psychological traps others enter unconsciously. They become what Jung called individuated, whole, sovereign, awake. Return to 1961. Jung's patient stands at the threshold, having recognized the 7 spaces that were destroying him. He faces a choice every person facing this knowledge must face: return to unconscious inhabitation of these places, or commit to the difficult work of sovereignty. The patient chose transformation. Within months, the symptoms that brought him to Jung, the insomnia, racing thoughts, dissociation, dissolved. Not because Jung cured him, but because he stopped poisoning himself with toxic psychological environments. You now possess what most people never learn: that your psychological environment is as crucial as your physical one. That certain mental spaces are toxic, regardless of how normal they seem. And that escaping them isn't about changing who you are, it's about reclaiming who you've always been beneath the contamination. But here's Jung's final warning. This knowledge is dangerous. Not because it will harm you, but because it will cost you. Leaving the echo chamber means losing the comfort of certainty. Exiting the comparison arena means confronting your intrinsic worth. Abandoning the performance theater means risking rejection. Fleeing the silent suffering space means disturbing false peace. Escaping the chaos storm means facing what you've been avoiding. Leaving the self-abandonment chamber means choosing integrity over security. Integrating the shadow means admitting you're everything you've judged. Most people, faced with these costs, choose to stay poisoned. They read this information, nod in recognition, then return to the same spaces tomorrow. Don't be most people, because the 7 places aren't neutral. They're actively destroying your mind every day you remain in them. And time is finite. You can spend your life trapped in these spaces, wondering why you feel drained and lost. Or you can do the work Jung's patient did, pay the costs sovereignty demands, and reclaim your consciousness. In our next exploration, we'll reveal the advanced techniques: how to recognize when others are trapped in these spaces, how to help without getting pulled in yourself, and the hidden 8th place Jung discovered late in life that makes all the others possible. That's the mastery level. But it begins here, with recognition, with choice, with finally understanding. Your mind is not a fixed entity. It's shaped by where you place it, and you've been placing it in spaces designed to break you. The 7 places are waiting. Some you'll visit today. The question is, will you recognize them? Will you choose to leave? Or will you spend another day in psychological environments that are systematically destroying who you could become? The door is open. Jung showed the way. Now walk.